Star Trek and the 4X genre seem like a match so perfect, it's a fantasy you'd have to create on the holodeck. A grand universe to explore, tons of interesting species and factions to meet, and some very cool spaceships. With so much promise, Star Trek Infinite should have been a slam dunk. But while I really wanted to like Star Trek Infinite, it didn't seem to like me back. It has some unique ideas, but after seeing several playthroughs blown up by bugs dozens of hours in, I'm happy to explore strange new worlds elsewhere. Star Trek Infinite is a space-based grand strategy game, heavily inspired by Stellaris. But developer Nimble Giant Entertainment has done a good job of making things just different enough to distinguish itself. You'll start by picking one of 4 factions: the Federation, the Klingon Empire, the Romulan Empire, or the Cardassian Union. This choice isn't just for flavor, as each faction plays dramatically differently. The Federation is the best at exploring, diplomacy, and researching new technology. The Cardassians excel at spycraft and conquering and enslaving other species. The Klingons' penchant for tradition and honorable combat make them the ones you want to use if you're looking to conquer the rest of known space. And the versatile Romulans, while great at stealth and guile, can either assimilate like the Federation, or conquer like the Klingons or Cardassians. It's good stuff. Every faction feels distinct, while still making it clear that they're playing the same game. And that's about it as far as your options go. Infinite has a ton of minor powers like the Betazoid houses, or the Kataran Enclave, but they're only there for you to assimilate, conquer, enslave, trade with, and so on. Which is a shame because it makes them feel more like resources rather than actual factions.
Red alert. The Klingon colony on Kitomer is under attack by a Romulan ambush.
The tutorial starts you off as the Federation, the most interesting faction, though the actual guidance you get is pretty bare bones.
Notice that our starship is not yet accelerating.
You'll probably need to watch several hours of YouTube tutorials before you actually understand what you're doing if you're not familiar with 4X games. But, once you're in, Infinite has some nice touches that really nail the Trek feel. You always start each new campaign in the same place at the same time, the year 2346. About 20 years before the beginning of the next generation. It's a smart choice. All the major powers are neighbors, at more or less the same strength, and a lot of the most important events in Star Trek are right around the corner. Fans of the shows will enjoy seeing canon events occur as time goes on. Encounters with certain strange space cubes, for example, or an exploding Romulan sun. The downside is that it takes a bit for each new playthrough to actually feel new.
Mission log updated.
Once you get going, though, things are like any other grand strategy game. Namely, you'll manage a lot of spreadsheets. You'll colonize planets, construct fleets, mine and manage resources, build your relationships with other powers, and boldly go where no one has gone before. But you do all of it by clicking through menus.
Scientific breakthrough achieved.
The appeal is in the larger choices you make to guide your faction, not in the moment-to-moment unit management. And all of these systems combine for a compelling, unique take on the 4X formula. The combat in Infinite sadly doesn't have the same depth. Usually, the only thing you have to do to win a battle is build a larger force than your opponent and throw it at them until they surrender. Despite what the J.J. Abrams reboot trilogy might try to tell you, Star Trek really isn't about ships shooting at each other with phasers and photon torpedoes. But it is kind of a bummer that there's not more variety to break up the menu management. One of the best additions to the genre is the mission tree, a series of branching events you can complete to take your civilization down different paths. For example, gather enough alloy as the Federation, and you can build the Enterprise. The tree also rewards some alternate, non-canonical paths, if you want to do something like take the Federation on a murderous rampage. Unfortunately, the Federation's tree is the only one with any interesting choices. Most of the mission trees for the other factions allow you to choose between reforming the worst parts of their culture, or being warmongers who read their lines with the level of menace reserved for Benedict Cumberbatch's Khan in Star Trek Into Darkness.
Shall we begin?
It's a very binary, are you good or bad kind of progression, but it does add a nice narrative flow to each run. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Will, this sounds alright. What was with that negative opening? Well, that's because we haven't talked about the bugs yet. Infinite is one of the buggiest games I have ever played, to the point where entire systems simply did not work in the review build. Some of these bugs are minor. For instance, occasionally, the in-game notifications would tell me that one of my leaders had died.
We have lost a true Federation hero.
So I'd frantically tab through them, wondering what had happened, only to discover Infinite just played the wrong voice line like some kind of cruel prank. Occasionally, whole mechanics would bug out as well, like when you initiate first contact with an alien race. You're essentially racing to see if you can make contact with them before they can make contact with you. And if they beat you to it, you don't get as many rewards from the post-race resolution. Either way, you're supposed to be able to interact with them normally from then on, but sometimes they'll beat you to it, you'll resolve that outcome, and then Infinite will act like you actually won the race and force you to resolve that outcome too. But the real glaring problem I consistently encountered is that the process for integrating new cultures into your empire always ceases to function after a certain point in any given run. Often when I was already a dozen or so hours deep.
Let's keep this polite.
I've played most of my Infinite runs as a pacifist, peacefully befriending and integrating other cultures into my civilization of choice, and only using combat as a last resort. But after a while, when I start the process with one of my envoys, nothing happens. That means I'm not only locked out of expanding my empire the way I want to, I also can't complete certain missions on the mission tree. And this happens every time. No amount of starting a new run, verifying my files, uninstalling and reinstalling, or anything else has made a difference. Similarly, the notifications you get can sometimes be disastrously wrong.
We are tracking an enemy fleet.
Once, I found myself drawn into a war with the Cardassians because they attacked my ally. Every pop-up and every in-game bar was telling me we were winning, but shortly thereafter, my ally surrendered. The list goes on. At a certain point, I stopped being able to even open the ship designs menu, which allows you to take on a ship class blueprint and slap on all the upgrades you get from the research your scientists have done. It's fun to be able to tailor your ships to your playstyle, and it means your older ships are still useful later on, or at least it was until I inexplicably lost access to it. There's a good grand strategy game in here somewhere, but right now, I can barely play it. Star Trek Infinite does a great job of capturing the look and feel of Star Trek, with those enticing bones splinter under the weight of its bugs and glitches. Each major power feels distinct, mission trees add choices and story elements to encourage you to roleplay your faction a certain way, and the consistent date and map setup provides rooms for experimentation and familiarity in each new run. But none of it works properly.
We have lost a true Federation hero.
I have yet to play a single game where I haven't encountered a back-breaking bug that either halts my progress entirely or cuts me out of fundamental features. Maybe these issues will get patched and sorted with time, but right now, this is a journey into the unknown you're better off avoiding.
We are tracking an enemy fleet.
For more strategy, check out our reviews of Total War Pharaoh or Wargroove 2. And for everything else, stick with IGN.